Hey guys, so today we're going to be reading another biography. So yesterday our biography was about Cesar Chavez, and today our biography is going to be about someone named Bessie, and you'll find out what she does in a little bit. So remember, a biography is a story about someone's life written by someone else, and it's a true story, and it will give facts and information about their life, and a lot of times they include timelines in the story. So our question this week is, what do heroes do? Read about the brave woman who became the first African American female pilot. So we're going to be talking about pilots and flying today. So our story is called Brave Bessie, and it is written and illustrated by Eric Velasquez. I think it's how you say it. Twice a year, a library wagon would stop in front of Bessie Coleman's little house in Texas. Bessie's mom would rent books for her 12 children to read. Bessie loved to read about Booker T. Washington and Harriet Tubman. They were her heroes. Bessie daydreamed of being someone special like them. So far, our setting is in Texas, which is near Louisiana. And by the pictures and kind of what it says, I'm guessing this is took place a long time ago. And I'm sure we'll find out the year later on in the story. She had 12 children. So she had 11 siblings, which is pretty crazy to think about. But she loved to read, and she wanted to be a hero one day, like Booker T. Washington and Harriet Tubman. So I think we talked about Harriet Tubman this year. She was the one who helped the slaves escape. Bessie knew school was important. She walked 4 miles each day to get to school and 4 miles home. She practiced reading to her little brothers and sisters. She practiced her numbers by checking the money her family got for picking cotton. Bessie scrimped and saved enough so she could go to college. She went to college at 18, but left after only a few months. She could not afford to stay in school, but Bessie was not ready to give up on her dreams. She decided to move to Chicago. Her brothers Walter and John lived there. It was a big and exciting city where people's dreams come true. So, education was very important to her. She walked 4 miles, which, if you're walking, that might take like an hour. So she walked an hour to school and an hour home, which is pretty crazy. Scrimped is kind of the same thing as like save. So she was very careful with her money. She saved it up. She started college, but after a few months, she couldn't afford it anymore. So she had to give up that dream. But then she moved to live with some brothers in Chicago. So she's moving kind of far away. So summarize what Bessie did to prepare for college. She saved her money. She went to school. Things like that. All right, let's keep reading. Bessie soon got a job in a barber shop. Bessie enjoyed listening to John tell stories about French lady pilots in World War I. Bessie had never heard of a lady pilot. The more Bessie thought, the more she liked the idea. Bessie knew she could learn to fly too. Bessie quickly discovered how hard it would be to become a pilot. In the 1920s, there were rules about who could learn to fly. Most people wouldn't teach someone with Bessie's skin color how to fly. Bessie did not agree with the rules, but she could not find anyone to teach her to fly. All right, so now we find out our story is taking place in the 1920s. So this is 100 years old. She, after kind of hearing about the war and stuff, she's very interested in flying and being a pilot. Which kind of reminds me of the story last week, how the girl was like, why are there no male presidents? I want to be president. So she's saying she wants to be a pilot, even though she is a girl. But the problem is back then that they would not teach people with her skin color, okay? Which obviously is not fair at all. But things were a little different back then. So she didn't agree with it, which rightfully so. But she couldn't find anyone to teach her to fly. So let's see what she does. One day, Bessie met a very important man who worked at a newspaper. She asked him if he knew anyone that could teach her how to fly a plane. He told Bessie to go to France. That is where she had first heard of lady pilots. This is where... He told her it would be a lot of work, but Bessie was determined to succeed. She took classes and learned to speak French. She saved her money and was finally able to buy a ticket to France. So our setting is changing again. Now we are going to France, which is in Europe. So she finally kind of figured out that she could learn to be a pilot, but that meant having to go to another country. So not easy. Obviously, she had to learn to speak French to be able to speak their language and had to save money because it takes a lot of money to get there. Bessie sailed to France on a steamship. She had never been on a ship before. It was big and noisy. The ocean was windy and rough. Bessie was a little scared being on a big ship all by herself. She reminded herself that she was on her way to being somebody special. The trip took 9 long days to sail across the Atlantic Ocean. Bessie stared out of the water, waiting to see land. Finally, Bessie reached France. Soon, she found a school that would teach her how to fly a plane. After years of hard work, Bessie was ready for her first flying lesson. So, based on the picture, I'm guessing that she left from New York because there's the Statue of Liberty we talked about earlier in the year in social studies. So, she is taking a steamship, so a big ship, to get to France. Remember, this is a long time ago, so I don't think traveling by airplanes was really a common thing. I don't know. Maybe it was, but not as common as today. So it took 9 days, which is a pretty long time to be on a ship. But this is what she wanted to do, so she was kind of doing whatever she had to do. All right, so she's ready for her first flying lesson. Let's see what happens. First, Bessie had to study how to inspect a plane. The plane had wings made of wood and cloth. Bessie had to check the cloth wings for any tears. She also had to check the propeller. After a few lessons, Bessie climbed into the back of the plane, and her teacher climbed into the front. The propeller whirled, and the engine chugged. After a running start, the plane took off. Bessie gripped the controls as she took to the air. Her cheeks were stinging from the cold wind, but Bessie was grinning. Bessie had to walk miles and miles to the flying school each day, just like she walked to school as a child. Bessie practiced how to take off and how to land. She learned all the words for planes and flying in English and in French. Finally, Bessie became the first African American woman to earn a pilot's license. People could call her an aviatrix, the name for a lady pilot. That meant she was truly someone special. So just like you have to get like a driver's license, obviously you have to get a pilot's license that says you are kind of trained and able to fly a plane. So she actually was the first African American woman to get that. So obviously planes are a lot different. I don't really think they're made out of wood and cloth anymore. So inspecting is kind of like checking to make sure nothing's wrong with it. So yeah, she learned how to fly a plane and kind of in French and English learned up the words and things. That was not the last page. Is it? Okay, sorry. Bessie returned to America. She was surprised to see reporters waiting to ask her questions. Many people were interested in Bessie. They wanted to see her fly her planes. Bessie wanted to help other African Americans. She wanted children to know they could make their dreams come true. She decided to earn money for her own flying school by performing stunt flying shows. One sunny day, over 1,000 people paid to see Bessie perform in New York. The crowd cheered as Bessie climbed into the cockpit. She was wearing a leather coat, a helmet, goggles, and a confident smile. I'm going to come back to the timeline last. So after she got her pilot's license, she came back to America, and all of a sudden, she was kind of a big deal. Like, reporters were there to see her. People wanted to see her fly. And she really wanted to help other African Americans, people like her who weren't treated the same and maybe didn't have the opportunity that she got. So she decided to earn that money by kind of doing some shows that people would, stunt flying shows that people would pay for. So she got into the cockpit is the part where the pilot sits in, and she got her stuff on and got ready to go. So let's read the next page and then I'll go over the timeline. The plane slowly rolled down the field and took off. Bessie performed challenging flying stunts like figure eights and tailspins. The crowd went wild. Bessie performed her stunts in Texas, Tennessee, and Illinois. She flew over fields like the one she picked cotton in as a child. Crowds of people were below her, waving and cheering. She had earned the title Brave Bessie. Years later, her dream of opening a school finally came true. The Bessie Coleman Aero Club taught African American people how to fly. Thanks to Bessie, their dreams were taking flight too. So she eventually used this money to open up her own school to be able to teach African Americans to fly. So they didn't have to go to France or another country. They could do it in America. So kind of did some big things, which is pretty awesome. And becoming a pilot obviously is a huge deal, I think. So let's look at the timeline. Let's see if I can zoom in. There we go. All right, 1892. Bessie was born on January 26th in Atlanta, Texas. So, long time ago. Almost 130 years ago. Bessie enrolls in college in 1910. In 1915, Bessie moves to Chicago, Illinois. In 1920, Bessie sails to France in the SS Imperator. So that's the name of the steamship she took. 1921, on June 15th, Bessie obtains her pilot's license in France. So obtained just meaning kind of like she got it, she earned it. In 1922, Bessie performs her first air show in New York. In 1925, Bessie earns the name Brave Bessie. In 1926, Bessie Coleman dies in Jacksonville, Florida. And then 1929, the Bessie Coleman Aero Club opens. So she actually died before her kind of school opened up, which is kind of sad. If I remember from the past, I think we Googled it last year, and I think she ended up dying in a plane crash, which is pretty sad. So the point of the story, obviously, is to learn about a hero, Bessie Coleman, but also to inspire you to follow your dreams, even if they're really hard. So she had a tough life. I mean, she had to drop out of college the first time because she didn't have money. She couldn't find anyone to teach her. But despite all of that, she still became the first African-American woman to earn a pilot's license, which is a big deal. Hope you enjoyed this story.